welcome into our fourth episode of Well Read, Well Said. We're at the end of May, so this is our breakdown episode, reading through this book.
Thank God.
Under the Banner of Heaven.
Right off the bat.
Not yet, Megan, not yet. Under the Banner of Heaven by Jon Krakauer. Real quickly, I want to talk about our Facebook group. If you're not part of the Facebook group, you can join in the conversation.
How many members do we have now?
1,700. So that's up 200 more from like 2 episodes ago. So
Yeah,
that's quite a few.
We'll be doing stuff in the Facebook group this week. And
It's been a little quiet lately. We've all been, it's summer now.
On vacation.
Summer now. So kids are out. We're doing a lot of things, vacation, traveling, things like that. So getting into our book for today, the genre that we picked for this month for May was true crime, and the book we read was Under the Banner of Heaven by Jon Krakauer. It explains and explores the dark side of religious extremism within Mormonism, looking at the history of the Jesus Christ Church of Latter-day Saints, LDS, and the true crime story of Ron and Dan Lafferty, 2 fundamentalist Mormon brothers who brutally murdered their sister-in-law and infant daughter in 1984, claiming that they did it because God told them to. We will get into all of that. First, I want to start with our trivia question. So today's trivia question is looking at the author. So what event or encounter sparked Jon Krakauer's interest in writing Under the Banner of Heaven?
Does he say it in the book?
well, he kind of talked about it in the afterward.
See, and I didn't even have I couldn't even go to the afterward. Once it said the book was done,
Like,
I was
the
done.
end. Melissa said the end. Okay. So that's our trivia question. So think on that, and we'll get to that in about 20 minutes when we are wrapping up our show.
Suspense.
We want to give everyone a heads up if you're watching right now, or say you're watching playback later. We will be talking in depth about this book, so there will be spoilers if you haven't read it and you want to read it first before you get our thoughts and honest truths about this book. So we'll start with moving into just the baseline of our review of this book. Do not give what you rated it.
Okay.
What were your initial thoughts?
I'll start off with the good. I learned a lot more than I expected to learn. It was not my favorite book that I've read, but I gave it a chance, and I'm not giving up on the true crime genre as a whole yet.
Because this really wasn't true crime genre. All of us said this the entire time. And then somebody, I Googled and it said it was the true crime genre, but then somebody said that it was a subgenre.
Historical.
And I think the only, I was looking, they get to the murders right in the beginning, but then the only other true crime part to me was when they were talking about the trial and how they were basically talking about whether anybody who's got these religious beliefs, whether Mormon or not, could be considered extreme. And so the courtroom stuff, that was the only true crime in this for me at all.
I agree with you, and that was what we've all kind of talked about over the course of the last couple weeks. So there's 26 real chapters in this book, not including the author note at the end and a couple other chapters. 26. Out of the 26, there are 4 chapters that talk about the actual crime and the murders. 4.
Okay.
4 chapters.
So I think we all decided on the side that we're gonna, maybe after this selection, we're gonna put true crime back into the wheel.
I think so, because I think this was more of a nonfiction history type
lesson.
book. And I learned a lot, and that's my initial thought. I think I learned a lot. I liked what I learned, but in the
I felt like I was in like a
mindset,
college
yeah,
class
of
reading
true
about
crime,
it, though.
Do you think that if it had been in a different genre in which we were expecting to be learning about religion, I think it would have
went about it better.
We would have had a better mindset going into it.
Agreed. Alexis?
Yeah, it just felt like a history class book. Or great, I learned a lot, not
But that's not
necessarily
what we
I
wanted. We were
like
looking for a true crime.
Yeah.
I remember saying to all of you, where is the crime? Like, when am I going to get to the murders?
just
And
get
I don't
it.
want to.
And it, like,
They get to
glaze
it right
over.
away, and then they just glaze
It
over
was like the prologue. I was like, oh, right.
until the very
Yeah.
end. They went into more detail.
What was funny was I think I started the book before everybody else, and I was like, okay, the prologue was really interested, and I'm really invested. And then as we got further into the book, I was like, oh, this isn't
What I
as
thought
much.
it was.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Not
and
at
so
all.
it took me longer to read this book than any other book that I've read so far this
But what
year.
I think is so interesting is it has amazing reviews online, like
Yes.
4.5 stars.
Except the one that I gave.
Which I thought it was, we were in our well-read, well-said group chat, and I was like, Megan, people agree with us. This is not true crime. And then I looked at the name, and it was Megan. Megan commented in the reviews. Yeah.
So let's get to the reviews. We'll start with Megan. What did you rate this book, Megan?
I gave this 2 stars. And the reason that I gave it 2 stars was basically that I don't think it was true crime. And I think he got too much in the weeds with explaining the history of the Mormon religion and the different break-offs and branches of the religion. So it was not one of my favorites, and I don't think I'd recommend it to anybody else and be like, oh my gosh, you have to read this book. So I gave it a 2.
Melissa?
Unless you were looking for a very deep dive into Mormonism. I also gave it a 2. I gave It Ends With Us a 3 because I felt like the writing wasn't, it wasn't a literary masterpiece. The writing was better here, but it just was not true crime. So 2.
And you almost DNF'd the book, too.
I tried to, but they said I can't, which I feel like we should be able to DNF.
I
right?
really almost DNF'd it too. I'll be honest, I finished it on
But like this.
Saturday. I was
Like a
scrolling to finish
struggle,
it. And in between reading this, I needed a pick me up. So I read a full romance book in 4 days. And then I picked this one back up halfway through.
Yeah.
I also gave it a 2-star.
Same. 2 stars. Just like we talked about. It was well written.
Yeah.
It just didn't catch.
You
I
have
just-
to knock some
yeah.
points off for it not being true crime.
Like
think
she said,
it's
it's so much in the weeds. Like we get that there's LDS and FLDS. We don't need to know every. I don't know why.
Yeah.
He thought we
Yeah.
did, but we knew not every. Probably there's probably more that we don't know about, but every different branch of
main
FLDS
ones,
and
yeah.
who started that one and who started this one and why they're in this one. Like I get it.
I thought it was
need-
interesting that we all gave it the same rating because reading
almost-
is subjective.
I almost
And-
gave it 1. I almost gave it 1
But it
star.
was well written.
Yes.
So you gotta give him that.
That's why I gave it the 2,
Yeah.
because it was well written.
Yeah.
To me, the only interesting part about the book was the court stuff when they were arguing
It was- that was
whether,
interesting.
insane or
whether
not.
he was insane, because you can argue a lot of the things we all believe could be considered insane. So I thought that was interesting, but that was about it.
I agree.
And I think like it does a disservice to put this in a true crime category. The reader is constantly like, okay,
Where's the crime?
where is it? Where is it? Where is it? And you're just so bored by what you're actually getting and what you're not getting that you're expecting.
I will say, I think maybe I should have watched the movie before, or the TV series before. I haven't watched it. That's my plan.
Only got through one
I
episode.
haven't watched it
I don't know
yet
if I
either.
can watch it now.
It
I want
is
to be away
interesting.
from this.
I think what I'm gathering from the first episode, I only watched one. The main character is a detective, and he's Mormon. So it's kind of, I don't know if they're going to use
a
him
different point
as
of
like
view.
the faith point of view, because we had so much of the faith in this book. Because he's kind of like, there's like a detective that's not Mormon, and he's Mormon, and he's not justifying what happened, but he's like, well, you have to think about Mormon, and so I think that's how they're going to intermingle. It was interesting, and Andrew Garfield's a great actor, so it's a good show in general.
I
just
think
fell
I want to
asleep,
watch it.
so.
That'll be maybe a this week project.
Which is
for
a
me.
problem you have
It's a
in
problem.
general.
I'm 9 o'clock. I'm sleeping. This book has been funny with me trying to read it at night, though. Oh, it
You
was
fall
ru-
asleep?
It was rough. My husband.
fell
It would be
asleep.
like 5 minutes, and my husband would be like, "She's out." Like I
out.
would. I just out.
Yeah,
tried.
that was me. I read 2 chapters and then I was like taking a nap basically.
It was
At my
hard.
brother's like graduation. I'm like,
rough. So
okay,
she
I gotta
just
put this
finished
down.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just finished
Yeah.
it like 2 days ago. So, okay, it's time for a break. We'll get deeper into our discussion of Under the Banner of Heaven coming up in just a few minutes. We've got a quick break. Welcome back in. Now is the time where we are going in depth with our book discussion. And I also want to talk about how coming up in about 10 or 15 minutes, we will choose our next book. But we got to get
excited for
this
that.
one
Next book.
first.
I'm already reading another book on the
Same.
side,
I
but
read one and a half
Same.
in between, but
That's the whole point. We read
Yeah.
multiple books at a
Yeah.
time. So that's
Yeah.
why we started this club. Okay, so a few of the themes that we will talk about are violence in the name of God, faith versus religious extremism, and the role of women in this book and specifically in LDS versus FLDS Mormonism. Okay, so I think first we should start with the murders.
Okay.
What this book is supposed to be about. When I was writing this down, I'm like, talk about the murders. And then in my head, I'm like, what murders? Because
so glazed over.
yeah, I mean, only 4 chapters where we really got into it. But I did start thinking about how there were other killings and murders in this book, and
did
one of
talk
them
about, yeah.
was the
massacre.
mountain.
Yeah,
What
and
did I
that
write
one's like
down? The Mountain
very
Meadows
well known.
Massacre.
yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't know. I mean, I know now about it, but I didn't know about
So what do we think about Ron and Dan Lafferty and this removal revelation that they had, and what led them to doing this?
it. I don't know. They wanted more of a role. I feel like they wanted.
In the church.
Yeah, and that's kind of why they split off.
Well, the whole book too was just about these people fighting and killing people over their desire to continue polygamy. And within this fundamentalist society, there are many different groups that started out of it. And this was just one group with mainly their brothers and a couple other people. And they had such happy marriages too before they went into this polygamy thing against the will of their wives. And when they get into the court part of it, they talk about whether this is just belief or extremism in your beliefs. And obviously that's what it is.
I think for a lot of, in this story specifically, for a lot of the people who ended up becoming part of the fundamental Mormons, they wanted a deeper connection with the Mormon religion, and they really wanted to live it out in its one true form. And that's how they ended up going down the road of fundamentalism, because Joseph Smith, it says in the book, his last revelation that he had from God was that they should take plural wives. And so that was cast off when modern Mormonism became, kind of more popular, and they were being prosecuted in the government with the United States.
I mean, it's all about like carrying on the line too.
Yes.
I don't know if people realize that it's not just like it's to carry on the line of belief and the line of your family, and the roots, and the tree gets so many branches, and that we were all kind of like, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Somebody's grandma can be somebody else's great step grandma because.
But without the cooperation of their wives and children who they were giving away or taking from another family at the age of 13, 14 years old to become their 22nd wife or whatever. You know, that's obviously like very disturbing. But then again, in the book, that's what they believe.
Yes.
So, and we all believe different things. So who can say? But I mean,
And that's what tipped off the brothers with Brenda, because she was very adamantly not
Yeah, she
okay with
didn't
it.
want
She was like,
Alan.
no, and she was outspoken. She would say her feelings, which you're not supposed to do that as a Mormon wife, I don't think. That's what they
Right.
believe.
no,
but
yeah, you're definitely not.
you're supposed to do what the man of the house tells you to do, and she and her husband too was kind of okay with not doing it, but he was more pressured by his brothers to do it. And in the show too, they portrayed her more as like when she met the family, the Lafferty family, they're all like, oh, you kind of do what you want, don't you? And they kind of gave her like the side eye, and she was like, well, I'm just like myself, and they didn't like that.
Would the brothers have done it if they weren't part of the fundamental Mormon? Like if they were just maybe normal LDS, do you think they would have been led to do something like this? I don't.
I don't think so.
I don't.
I think if they hadn't received the, what was it, the proclamation or whatever, yeah, the revelation.
But there's also
I don't think they would have
crazy
done
in
it.
there. I mean, there's a mental
Like,
component
make
because
up
again, we all don't
Yeah.
just, you know, whether you believe, you know, certain religions believe there literally was a Noah's Ark. Some don't. They think it's more of a story to prove certain points. So like without the recipe of what they believed and to that extreme, there still is, I believe, and that's what they were talking about in all those court chapters,
cases, yeah.
is a level of disconnect.
Right.
Well, and it wasn't just Brenda on the list. There's more than wasn't there
Like five people, yeah.
They only got to Brenda and the baby, but
Right.
they were about to do
More, yeah.
More, yeah. Do we think people can be prosecuted for their religious beliefs? I think that's kind of the biggest question at play in this entire book is they really believe this. They say that God told them that they had to murder
Eliminate.
these multiple people.
Look what's going on
order
in the world
for-
right now. Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There's Christians in hiding. Look at what's going on in the Middle East. Like, look at what happened to our own country on 9/11.
And
all
one thing that
religious,
was kind of shocking to me was this book was written in 20 years ago now. 2003, I think, is when we determined that it was written. And so
and
we're
4, I
still
think.
seeing
things happen.
things
like that.
happen
Yeah.
with this, and we're still seeing
Other
the
religions,
effects of
too.
it as
Yeah.
well.
Well, what I thought was interesting was in the chapters about the court case, his lawyers were telling him you should plead like guilty by insanity. And he was like, I'm not insane.
Oh.
You know, God told me to do this, so I did it. I'm not pleading that way. I'm, you know,
Yeah, they never said they didn't do it. They took full responsibility for doing it and believing they were told to do it.
Yeah, laid it out and everything
Yeah.
too.
Every part of
Yes,
it.
yeah. Okay, let's move into the religion. So modern Mormonism versus the fundamental sect of Mormonism. So what insights do you feel that you gained about the history of Mormonism, and is there anything that surprised you or challenged your previous perceptions?
I was very surprised because, you know, the LDS Church separates itself from the FLDS Church, but both were rooted in Brigham Young and Joseph Smith, which, I mean, there's Brigham Young University. I'm just surprised that the more, and I do believe that this guy took a very negative stance toward Brigham Young and Joseph Smith in his writings. And I even saw some people who reviewed the book who apparently were Mormon. I read the reviews. They were angry at him for going after the LDS Church. But it just surprised me that Mormons of today who go to BYU and things like that, I mean, those were two bad guys in this book. Very bad guys in the book.
And led everyone to do what they said, to fully believe these people 110%. people followed them and did what they said to a T, and in some instances still kind of do what they say. Part of the Book of Mormon is that you shouldn't drink caffeine, that you shouldn't, and there are Mormons that still practice that, but when it comes to the one revelation that Joseph Smith had, they separate themselves entirely from that. So
It's like picking and choosing.
Which is interesting because some religions, for example, Baptists, they really believe that whatever is in the Bible is literal. So if you throw out one part of it, then you can throw out the whole thing. So it is interesting, that they just say, okay, we're going to agree on all this stuff except the polygamy part.
And I think that's where the fundamental Mormons, we read multiple times that they believe that they are the one true Mormon, and the other ones are the apostates, and they're Satan.
kind of willingly do what they want.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting because I didn't really, before reading this, know a lot about the Mormon culture. Like, I've only, seen Sister Wives, the TLC show. And so I thought a lot of, the Mormons are in Utah, but it was interesting to talk to you and that there are some in Las Vegas.
It's a huge religion now.
Yeah,
Canada
and they're
too.
Canada,
Canada,
the Pacific Northwest. So I thought it was interesting to learn that it's not just solely in Utah, that they've kind of branched out and moved different places.
Mexico too. There's
Yeah.
And the history of that too, because I've always known them where I grew up, and I thought that Brigham Young and Joseph Smith were all in Utah and Idaho, and that's where it all started. I didn't realize it started in New York and then went to Illinois and Ohio. And
Well, that's what I think is interesting is the formation of the country and the whole movement out west, and the fact that we had limited government at that time. So, and I struggle with whether these guys really believe that these were revelations or they just made the whole thing up and sold it to a bunch of people. But, you have limited government at that time. So there's probably a thought of who are these people to tell me we can't do X, Y, and Z? We're just going to keep moving over. I mean, you don't know what the government was to become fully yet.
yeah, and they were charismatic. That's what he said. Joseph Smith and Brigham Young were charismatic men, and that's why.
So are most cult leaders.
right? Exactly.
You don't follow someone who's like a boring dud.
You're like, oh, they're pretty cool. I
Yeah.
want to be like them.
Okay, let's move into how these men charismatically got their multiple wives and women, and the role that women play in this book and in the fundamental Mormon religion. And I don't think it's a very good light that the women have. Basically told to be quiet and make kids for me.
Make babies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's disturbing. It's rape, really. I mean, of children is what it is.
One of the things that I think shocked all of us was how young and how many wives a lot of these
Men have.
had. And in some instances, they only had 2 or 3. And I'm not trying to
And
make
some
light of that.
had
Be like,
20 or 30.
2 or 3. But yeah,
Was
like,
it Joseph Smith or Brigham Young had 80 or something?
Marrying stepdaughters,
Yeah.
friends, 13 and 14-year-old
I wrote-
daughters.
hold
These
on.
girls dreaded turning 13
Yeah,
or
they-
14 years old because they knew
They knew.
it was coming.
there was one, hold on, I'm pulling up the page, 263. Uncle Rulon, he was 3 months shy of his 93rd birthday, left behind an estimated 75 wives and at least 65 children. And he was one of the prophets of the UEP, which is one of the sects of the FLDS church.
There's
So,
several.
76 wives?
Yeah.
And he would take them as a wife when they were, 13, 14 years old. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Under the guise of religion.
Yeah.
And many of them were abused. There were some instances that we read about where the girls had said that they told their husband no. They would tell their mom and dad that they didn't want to marry this guy who was 50 years their senior.
They didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
Or they'd be cast out on their own.
Yeah.
Sad.
Yeah.
I've seen one of the things that really interests me, and it's always interested me before reading this book, is the documentaries of the people who leave the fundamental Mormon group and their stories on how they had these husbands who were their cousins and their dad's uncle or whatever, and it's crazy that these things still
It's not
happen.
like they're not aware of who these people
Yeah.
are. Like they know, and like you have to think they know it's wrong, but they have, or do they know it's wrong? I don't know. It's probably normal in some situation for them, but like also they have to.
I think while they're in it, it's normal for them. They don't want it, but it's normal because their dad has
choice.
10 wives or however many wives. But then when they leave,
Like your own uncle, like, ugh.
And they have society telling them, the LDS
Doing the
church,
right
that this is
thing.
wrong. So they're hearing that. They know it's society doesn't go along with this.
Yeah. Okay, that's our part of the discussion. We have some discussion questions. I'm only going to get to one. If you could ask the author of this book, John Cracker, one question about this book, what would it be?
Ooh.
Where's the true crime?
Yeah.
Why was the history so much? I think he said it in the back.
He did.
What did he say though? I don't
So,
remember. Because I was like wanting to be done
He
with
grew up in the Pacific Northwest and grew up kind of around this,
faith.
religion,
Yeah.
the faith. And he was always very interested in it. And he first set out to write the book about the history of the faith and how it came to be and how it evolved. And then he must have, in his interviews, stumbled upon these murders and morphed the two together. And in my opinion,
So he wrote it as a history book.
Right.
Yeah, he thinks he added,
He did.
put
And then
some
he
true crime.
sprinkled in
It is
some crime
it's
in there.
still a history book.
In
Yeah.
my opinion, it should have been one or the other, not both.
Yeah. He could have written some type of something else after writing about the history of it.
Right.
So I think all of us feel that this wasn't entirely like
Like we got
buttoned up.
duped. Like we got
Like,
duped.
yeah.
It wasn't. He duped us.
Right.
I want to ask him why he duped us.
But I mean, aren't all these people classifying it as true crime? I mean,
Yes.
Yeah.
A lot of people liked it too, which is why it
Thousands of people do.
was rated.
Not me.
but somehow they must
rated
know
so
what they're
high.
getting into.
We had to have.
We should have picked that other
Well,
one.
they
we
were
know
like,
three
they
out
were-
of
they
Jack
went
the
into
Ripper
it.
was.
They
Don't read.
We should have picked Jack the Ripper.
Well, I think other people went into it going, I want to know about everything about Mormon. I want to know everything about Mormon. And now they do after
Yeah,
reading it.
and
So they're
so
like,
they
great
like it.
book. Great
Yeah.
book.
And we were like,
Exactly.
true crime.
And
Thank you.
It was, yeah.
So we just won't give up on the true crime.
No,
we're
I
gonna
want
put it back in the
everyone
wheel
back
next
in.
time.
Yeah.
We're putting
Yeah.
it back in the wheel
Agree.
because we did not
I
get
know
that
there's ones out there.
satisfied scratch.
There's some out there for us.
Yep.
Before we move on, we want to get to our trivia question one more time. What event or encounter sparked John Krakauer's interest in writing Under the Banner of Heaven? We'll have that answer coming up after a short break. And when we come back, we have a special guest to help us choose our next genre and book for next month. Welcome back in. It's time for us to go over the trivia question, but first we've got our special guest as well with us, Kelsey from the Wood County District Public Library.
Of course.
So Kelsey is going to help us choose our next book and our genre for us, but first we want to get the answer of the trivia question. So the question, one last time, what event or encounter sparked John Krakauer's interest in writing Under the Banner of Heaven? What are your guys' guesses?
Do you know?
Gosh, I don't
Oh,
know.
no, you don't know. Darn, I don't know either. I don't remember.
You must have met some Mormon bigwig or something.
Okay.
I'm gonna assume, is it like the big murder and like the mountain battle and
the
all of that?
massacre.
Yeah, the massacre.
Oh, he was pretty interested in the massacre.
All of you are wrong. Oh, great. It is that he got a letter from Dan Lafferty, one of the killers, that led him to interview him in prison, which ultimately pushed him to write this book.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I wish we would have got more of his like interview.
I would
with
have loved to
Dan.
read that letter.
Right. The
Yeah,
interview.
like more
There's
of that.
the true crime.
Yeah, like to get inside that guy's head. Yeah.
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 We didn't get
But we
that,
got part of it.
We got part of it, but
Fair.
not
4
enough.
chapters worth
We got
out
a
of
skim
26.
of it, like a tease.
That's less than like 1%. Okay, don't do my math. Okay, up next, right now, we're gonna choose our genre.
It better be a good one.
I'm sure.
No pressure though.
No pressure. No pressure.
Time.
So
How did
we've
we
got
do
our
the
wheel of genres.
wheel.
It's popped up right behind us, and it's fancier this time.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we've got
Hey, there's like
graphics for all of it. So Tim, our director, is going to spin it for us, and it's going to decide which genre we have next.
Moment of truth.
One.
And true crime is not in this one. That one is out of it. Oh yes, mystery thriller.
Oh, yeah, that's a good
Okay.
one.
I got some good ones for this.
All right.
Okay.
I should say my
take it
librarian's
away.
got
Okay,
some good ones for
Kelsey's
this.
got it.
All right, should I start?
Yes.
Okay, so our first one is Beautiful Ugly by Alice Feeney. A year after his wife Abby mysteriously disappeared, author Grady, still consumed by grief, retreats to a remote Scottish island to encounter a woman who looks exactly like the wife that he lost.
Oh.
Very, very good reviews for that so far. Our second one is Vera Wong's Unsolicited Advice for Murderers by Jessie Q. Sutanto. When she disappears, discovers a dead man in the middle of her tea shop, Vera calls the police, but not before swiping the flash drive from the body, setting a trap for the killer that becomes complicated by unexpected friendships with her customers. So a little bit of comedy, a little bit of mystery for that one. And then the last one is The Busybody Book Club by Freya Sampson. In a Cornish seaside village, Nova and her dysfunctional book club members become amateur sleuths after a theft threatens their community center. A murder implicates a missing member, and secrets among them complicate their quest to solve the case.
I really like the
Good
first
different
one.
choice from our
First
library.
one's
I'm hoping for the
ugly.
first one. Okay.
So it's
Now
not
we're
gonna
gonna
get
spin the wheel
Tim,
again.
Just do the first one, please. Oh.
Oh,
Beautiful
Haley calls
Ugly.
it.
Alice Feeney. Oh, I'm actually really excited
popular,
for this
right?
one.
She's
Yes,
I've seen
she is
her
very
everywhere.
popular. She
Okay.
has a few other bestsellers that have come out, but this is her most recent one, and people are really, really loving it so far. Very thriller mystery for those. The other two were comedy, so a lot of different things that you can incorporate with mystery. But you guys got
I
to
think
pick the
after
thriller
the
one.
last one, we have like PTSD. Like we don't want other things in the
Sure.
book.
Yeah.
Like comedy. Where are we going with this? I feel like this is a good one.
I feel like this is a solid choice.
Yeah.
I feel like this is a
I
solid
said
choice.
that about the last one. I said I was really excited.
That one is also on my TBR list.
You
So I'm
should
not-
read it.
don't do
I
it.
know.
It's not a bad book. It's just not what we expected.
We all just rated it 2 stars. It's
Ah,
fine.
not a bad book though.
Just don't go to it in the mindset of it being true crime.
Sure.
Now that
sure.
we've made this very appealing for you.
Like a
Of course,
history
yeah.
book.
Let me get right on that, guys.
Yeah, maybe move some other ones up on your TBR.
Prioritize others before you do that one.
Like this one from my librarian.
Yeah, read it with us. Let us
I think
know.
people will like this.
I think so too.
And I think it's good because it's crimey and we
Yeah.
didn't get that.
Yeah,
yeah.
Absolutely.
So it'll give you your little true crime fix.
really flows in well with the true crime.
Yeah.
I like that. All right, well, that's all we've got, everyone. Our next episode is on June 3rd. You can watch it right here on WTOL 11+. It'll be live at 10:30 in the morning. And if you want more of all the things we talk about some other books as well, you could join the conversation on our Facebook book club, Well Read, Well Said, WTOL 11+. That's our Facebook group. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.